one day, the Morris office called me up and said, you know, Jayne, there's a game show, and they're holding auditions today, and I think you'd be perfect for it. Well, I heard the word game, but I had never, up to then, I didn't own a TV set. I had never, ever seen a game show. So Mother was visiting us in New York, and Audrey and I had an apartment, and Mother and I walked the dog over to CBS, and I walked into the studio. Every actor and actress you name, Nina Foch, every single one of them were there auditioning. And as I stood in the doorway, I was a little bit late. Mark Goodson looked up, never had seen me before, and said, young lady, you redhead, what's your name? Fortunately, a man who was working for the Goodson Todman office that was seated next to him said, oh, that's Jayne Meadows. She's a Hollywood actress, movie actress. And so he said, come in, sit on the panel. I sat down. Now, I had not seen the show, not seen the rehearsal or anything. After I finished playing, I don't know, maybe a couple of games, he let everybody go. And he came over to me and he said, you are a very good game player, young lady, but it's your personality. He said, I think you have a very commercial personality. And I was dying to find out what he meant. And I said, oh, and he said, yes, you're very saucy. And that's commercial. I'll never forget that. Nobody, in my whole life, nobody had ever thought I was saucy. So he said, we would like to give you 3 shots on our show. And they had been on 2 weeks. I've Got a Secret. Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, I forgot to say that it was I've Got a Secret. Now, I'd never seen What's My Line had been on before us. But as I say, all I thought about was Broadway. Now, he said, we'll give you 3 shots. Come to the theater. And next week, told me the theater. No, it wasn't next week. It was like 2 or 3 days later. But you see, this is live TV. And they, in those days, were on a Thursday, so I guess our audition was on a Friday, and I was to do the show the next Thursday, having never seen it. He said, wear an evening gown and come to the theater, and you will have 3 shots. And I got all fixed up. Audrey and I hadn't met Steve yet. Audrey and I were sharing an apartment, and I owned 1 evening gown. No makeup, street makeup. There was no makeup department on I've Got a Secret and no hair department. You just went as is. And I said to Audrey, I'm nervous. And she said, well, meet me afterwards. I'm meeting with, the gang at the Park Sheraton Hotel. That's where Jackie Gleason lived. And come have supper after the program. I said, oh, gosh, Audrey, no, I'll be too nervous. I'll just drop dead after the show. I don't know what I'm doing. And I went to the theater, and I did it. And afterwards, he and Bill Todman took me aside and said, we'd like to sign you to an exclusive contract. 7 years. Oh, I couldn't wait to meet Audrey, to tell her we're going to at least be eating for the next 7 years. I went over to the Park Sheraton, sat down with the gang, all our friends, and, I guess I'd been there about 15 minutes. Through the doorway came a man. I had seen him on television. I knew his name. And I am not lying to you. You can ask, well, I don't have any relatives that are alive anymore, but in our family, in fact, I was even written up in the psychiatric magazine, journal, whatever, in New York. I've had very strong ESP ever since I was a little girl. Mother had it too. I looked at this man and I thought, if he's not married, he's going to be someday. And to me, 2 years almost to the day, and we were married. Now, there was one empty chair next to me, and Steve came in, and he couldn't sit anywhere else. He had to sit next to me. He sat down. He never said one word to me. When he was introduced, he just went like that. He was the shyest man I had ever met in my whole life. And after we finished eating, he went over to Audrey, and he said, let's all, he was the most successful member of the group. He had a car. Nobody else did. And he said, let's go over to Longchamps and have dessert and bring your sister. And when we got out on the sidewalk, he said to me, you sit in the front seat with me. And I thought, for a man who's never said a word to me, not how do you do, not anything, and now it's sit, and there were exactly 6 of us, 3 girls now with 3 men, which meant that the 2 girls sat in back with 1 actor and 1 sat in front with Steve driving and me. And I did something that I hadn't done anything this feminine or this naughty in years. I knew that the girl in the back seat was the secretary who lived in Brooklyn. And I said, oh, to Steve, how nice. Oh, this is a lovely car. And I said, we're going to drive her home to Brooklyn, right? And he said, yes. And it was summertime in New York, and it was a balmy evening, and riding along the waterfront, going to Brooklyn to take her home. I tell you, I was sure that I would marry that man.